Let's continue our analysis of those adjusted or modified metrics for the economic profit that we already started. Because now we need to generalize and just to think about the role of this modified economic profit in business analytics and operating performance monitoring and management. And at that slide, I would like to focus your attention on the role of the modified economic profit to the financial control over the expenses, over the results in the company. And at first, we need to mention that on one side, these metrics, which are adjusted to predominant resource or the source of the largest part of expenses within the cost structure of the product of the company, could be applied and should be applied, of course, for the entire firm, for the entire company. But the same could be done also for individual business units. If you are talking about, let's say, big holding company, to individual subsidiaries, they may differ in their profile of the costs. They may operate in rather different industries, and that's why it's, of course, reasonable to apply the modifications. We already shown the logic of those modifications to the subsidiaries operating in different industries with different cost structures and different dominant resources. The same is true for the internal business units. If you are not a holding company, you're just regular but maybe large company with divisional organizational structure, and you have rather different business units in terms of the products and cost structures of those products. And even within one business unit or within the much smaller company, which doesn't have divisional organizational structure, you may apply the same idea and technique for different product segments because they also may depend rather differently on different drivers, and they have also different cost structures. It is also applicable not only to product segments, but also to the customer segments, because to acquire and to retain different customer segments could also be very different message and task for the management team of the company, and may cost rather different money to work with the loyalty of the customer segments if those customer segments really differ. So you also may apply these modified metrics for your so-called ex post analysis of your past results for throughout some years, just to look at the dynamics of those metrics to try to make your smarter judgment about the success or about the failure of some subsidiaries or some business units or product segments or customer segments. But at the same time, the modified economic profit can also be applied ex ante, just for the planning purposes, for the decisions to allocate resources, just because you will set up the goal about the desired market value for your overall company. And then setting that goal, you will need to understand what is the gap between this desired market value and between your current market value of the business. And then that difference between target market value and your current market value could be split down. You can develop like a driver's tree. And because you pretty well know that you have different business units or different subsidiaries inside which differ by their predominant resource, then you will apply these targets for and develop your desired target value added per customer, value added per person, value added per supplier, value added per each unit of research and development, etc. And you will also develop your target for average cost per customer, average cost per person, average cost per supplier, or average cost for your research and development unit, so on and so forth. And I think this is a really powerful approach to modify your economic profit to adjust closer to the profile of your business model and the way you generate your products, you generate your clients, you retain your clients, and you finally generate your cash flows. And of course, if you look, let's say, at the idea of costonomics, which should be focused on mostly on the customers in the business which are really dependent on these services like internet, telecoms, and of course, retailers, and even financial sector, insurance companies, and banks, and investment funds, so on and so forth, you may set up the targets that are applicable to the overall general capital view, but maybe it's not as smart to set up the target for return on capital employed and for the desired level of the capital employed, let's say, for these particular businesses, because this is too general vision. But if you also add costonomics ideas and compute your actual ex post value added per customer compared to the cost per customer, and you will get the impression which particular branches are generating positive spread between value added per customer versus cost per customer. And then from this, you can find your benchmarks and set up your targets for the value added per customer and cost per customer. And that's why it's really smart vision for the financial control. You can also, of course, apply several different approaches in case you have different business units, even for the planning purposes, to adjust your planned targets for different specific profiles of your business units, your subsidiaries, your product lines, and so on. We can also think about the global companies, those large-scale companies which are moving in new geographical regions, which have their business units in very different national environments, which have cross-border structure. They have some units in other countries. From the capital point of view, comparing different regions, as it's shown here on this picture. In this slide, let's say comparing the region 1 to the region 5, you may see that the region 1 from the capital view doesn't look attractive because it provides the economic profit or residual income rather small. But your region number 5 looks much better than the region number 1. It provides residual income really bigger. But when you look precisely on the profile of that region and imagine this is, let's say, some retail company, when you are really very dependent on the customers or some other customer-focused businesses, and when you compare your value added to the average cost for your customer, value added per customer versus average cost per customer, then the picture is totally different. The region 5, you see here, provides very small contribution to your economic profit overall for your business. But the region number 1 is really very efficient. So your understanding of the particular situation on the productivity of your predominant resource according to your specific profile between these branches, between these units, between these subsidiaries, between these geographical even regions is much smarter. And if you are better understanding your particular current situation, then of course this is like a condition, like a specific starting point to better planning, to better setting up the targets and then control them and monitor them really smarter in the future. So, to summarize, we may also say that when you are applying this more focused or modified approach to the economic profit, you may develop rather much smarter picture of your value drivers. And then doing this, you should go through several steps. And I would like to summarize all these steps here on that slide. And the first, of course, you need to set up your current metrics for economic profit from capital point of view, rather, and of course from customer or clients, human resource or human capital, supplies, or just organizational capital point of view. You may just pick up one modified economic profit adjustment because this is your predominant resource you should focus on. You may apply all these versions. It depends on that particular profile of the company. And then, of course, at the next step, you will identify which one is more important. It could be segmented, your business, by customers, by the types of your personnel, by the types of your suppliers, or by the types of some other components of your organizational capital. You may focus on one dimension among those or all their combination. The step number 3 is related to the metrics which will describe in details this chosen segmented criteria from the step number 2. You are going to quantify, to provide some metrics for particular modification. If you want to be focused on your custonomics, on customers, you will think in terms of the technical metrics, how you are going to describe the differences between different customer segments in different units and branches providing your products. Then you will run the sensitivity analysis trying to understand what if the particular driver changes, let's say by 1%, by 2%, by 5%, whatever. You may try to simulate this, just fixing all other drivers unchanged and trying to understand the highest sensitivity level for each particular driver. You will then choose the most important driver for you to get your customer metrics. The same is true for your workonomics or for modification of your economic profit per each person from the qualified personnel team. You also will set up some quantified metrics for this personnel and derive and run your sensitivity analysis. That's what we can do in our practical projects. At the step number 4, it's also possible to run more sophisticated scenario analysis when you do not fix all other drivers and change only one of those, but you may try to identify the joint impact on the customer value or just value added per customer, average cost per customer, and economic profit created per customer. The same for personnel, the same for the components of organizational capital. So this scenario analysis is, of course, a powerful tool. It's really more complicated, but it gives you more understanding of particular shifts that could happen in your competition and in your business environment. And last but not the least, then it's really worth to build the so-called scorecard for your own company, for your particular business units which differ by their dominant resource, for your subsidiaries, and maybe even for your customer segment. And from that scorecard, you may just develop very condensed, very intensive so-called dashboard just to look at the most important metrics for operating performance monitoring. And it's not only the story about the metrics, some particular measures, but it's also the story about some actions that you well ahead should think about. What if the metrics are going down? So what should be done? Who is responsible? Who need to step in? What if they are going up, but they are still not at the target level? They are still not at the threshold. Which particular actions then in that situation should be also applicable? And who is responsible to get the metrics up to the target levels? And this is the story about operating performance management. Let's conclude on the advantages of the modifications of economic profit, calculations for operating monitoring purposes within value-based mode of thinking. I think you would agree with this first point of our summary that modified economic profit metrics, they are capable to provide really full and much wider logic of value drivers, of value driver trees, because they can actively involve very specific, unique, key non-financial capital components into the analysis, setting up the quantitative metrics, targets, and trying to understand how far are you now from your target value tree metric. Next, what is also very important, these modifications permit to differentiate between different business units, because they actually are running business in different markets and maybe in different industries. And then it will give you much more clear understanding of the contribution to the value creation, to economic profit creation by each unit, each segment, each subsidiary. And the third point on that slide also, it's very important, because if you see that some units or some segments of your business, they do not provide positive contribution when you compare, let's say, value added per customer with the cost per customer, or value added per person with the cost per person. But this is your signal about the negative trends within this unit or within this subsidiary, or here in that particular market segment of your business. And that's why it becomes more visible than in the simple traditional capital view. Everything matters, all types of metrics, this traditional from capital viewpoint, as well as those modified metrics. They also are very important.